In this video, we delve into the chilling and resourceful tactics employed by the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War, a conflict that not only reshaped global geopolitics, but also left a lasting psychological impact on the soldiers who fought in it. The Viet Cong's use of ingenious and terrifying booby traps, guerrilla warfare strategies, and their complex network of underground tunnels made them a formidable enemy. These tactics, designed to maim, kill, and instill fear, played a pivotal role in the Vietnam War's brutal legacy. Join us as we explore how these methods changed the course of history and struck fear into the hearts of the enemy, making the jungles of Vietnam a deadly battleground. The dense jungles of Vietnam during the 1960s and early 1970s concealed an insidious enemy that instilled fear and terror in the hearts of soldiers, settlers, and rival Native American tribes alike. Amid the brutality of the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army used a terrifying array of booby traps, designed not only to maim and kill, but also to demoralize their enemies, leaving a lasting impact on both the battlefield and the minds of the soldiers. These traps were notorious for their cruelty, from the infamous punji stick pits to bamboo whips, and became infamous symbols of the guerrilla tactics employed by the Viet Cong during the war. In this video, we will explore the hidden, sinister world of these booby traps, the psychological warfare they inflicted, and how they came to define a significant aspect of the Vietnam War. The Viet Cong's guerrilla tactics employed during the Vietnam War were a combination of cunning, resourcefulness, and brutal efficiency. This communist guerrilla force fought against the U.S. and South Vietnamese troops, developing an unorthodox warfare strategy that worked to their advantage. The term Viet Cong guerrilla tactics became synonymous with unexpected ambushes and traps that caught enemy troops off guard. In the late 1950s and throughout the 1960s, the Viet Cong adapted their tactics to face the superior firepower and resources of the U.S. military. They used their knowledge of the terrain, blending in with the local population and using the natural environment as their ally. One of their most iconic tactics was the establishment of an intricate network of underground tunnels, such as the Cu Chi tunnels near Ho Chi Minh City. These tunnels allowed the Viet Cong to move undetected, store supplies, and even set up makeshift hospitals for the wounded. The tunnels were equipped with booby traps like the punji stick pits, which were used to maim and kill unsuspecting soldiers. This was just one element of their psychological warfare campaign that sought to instill fear in the enemy. The Viet Cong also relied on other traps, such as modified hand grenades, bouncing Betty mines, and net traps, all designed to cause physical harm and terrorize the soldiers. They also tampered with food and water supplies, using poison and venomous animals like snakes and scorpions to sabotage their enemies' resources. The master of the Viet Cong guerrilla tactics was General Vo Nguyen Giap, who led the Vietnamese forces with strategic brilliance. His famous quote, "We will fight the enemy with our cunning and make them die in their anger," encapsulated the ethos of the Viet Cong. Their success was rooted in their ability to outmaneuver and outwit a technologically superior opponent, using psychological warfare and traps to create an environment of fear and unpredictability. The Cu Chi tunnels, a vast network of underground passageways that stretched for over 250 kilometers, were critical in the success of the Viet Cong's guerrilla warfare. These tunnels, built between the late 1940s and the 1960s, were strategically placed from the outskirts of Saigon to the Cambodian border, providing a hidden base for the Viet Cong to launch surprise attacks, store supplies, and evade capture. Life in the Cu Chi tunnels was far from easy. The tunnels were narrow, poorly ventilated, and extremely cramped, forcing the Viet Cong to live and work underground for long periods. Despite these challenges, the tunnels were equipped with various facilities including sleeping quarters, kitchens, and makeshift hospitals. The ingenuity of the Viet Cong allowed them to survive and fight in these conditions, and they used the tunnels to launch sudden attacks before disappearing into the shadows. The discovery of the tunnels by U.S. and South Vietnamese forces in the early 1960s led to the formation of specialized units called tunnel rats. These soldiers volunteered to crawl into the narrow, dark passageways to search for enemy combatants and disarm traps. The work was hazardous, and many soldiers lost their lives during these dangerous missions. One famous tunnel rat, Sergeant Samuel Orozco, recalled his harrowing experience in the tunnels, saying, "You never knew what was waiting for you around the next bend, a tripwire, a snake, or maybe even a Viet Cong soldier." Despite efforts to destroy the tunnels, the Viet Cong continued to rebuild and use them for their guerrilla campaigns, forcing the U.S. and South Vietnamese forces to constantly adapt. The tunnels were a critical advantage for the Viet Cong, allowing them to outmaneuver their enemies and frustrate their efforts. One of the most infamous traps used by the Viet Cong was the punji stick. These were sharpened bamboo stakes, hidden in the ground and designed to cause severe injuries to any soldier who unwittingly stepped on them. Often coated with poisonous substances such as venom from poisonous plants, human waste, or animal excrement, the tips of these bamboo sticks carried a high risk of infection, adding another layer of danger to the traps. Punji stick traps were typically deployed along well-worn paths near riverbanks, or at the entrances to the Cu Chi tunnels to protect against intruders. The sheer brutality of these traps is evident in the personal accounts of soldiers who were injured by them. Private Frank Harbert, a U.S. Marine, described his experience. "I felt a sharp pain in my foot, and before I knew it, I was on the ground screaming in agony." Though Harbert's injury was not fatal, it left him out of the fight for weeks, and he became a victim of the psychological warfare that the Viet Cong waged against their enemies. The psychological impact of the punji stick traps was immense. The constant threat of stepping on one created a sense of unease and paranoia among U.S. and South Vietnamese soldiers. The fear of unseen dangers lurking beneath the jungle floor became a constant concern, eroding soldiers' confidence and making them more susceptible to mistakes and accidents. In addition to punji stick traps, the Viet Cong used a variety of booby traps and landmines to terrorize their enemies. The Bouncing Betty mine, which originated in Germany during World War II, was one of the most fearsome weapons in their arsenal. Upon detonation, the mine would launch itself into the air and explode, causing devastating injuries to anyone in the vicinity. These mines, along with other booby traps like the grenade in a can and tripwire mines, were designed to catch soldiers off guard and inflict maximum damage. The use of these traps was not only to cause physical harm, but also to demoralize enemy troops. The Viet Cong's ability to create these traps with simple materials was a testament to their resourcefulness and cunning. The widespread use of booby traps and landmines took a heavy toll on U.S. and South Vietnamese forces, both in terms of casualties and morale. The Viet Cong also employed wire traps, such as snap traps and slide traps, to inflict harm on enemy troops. The snap traps, also known as whip traps, were constructed by attaching a length of wire to a tree or bamboo stalk. When triggered, the wire would snap back, driving a sharp object into the victim with tremendous force. The slide traps, on the other hand, were designed to make soldiers lose their footing and fall into a pit lined with sharpened bamboo stakes. These traps were ingeniously designed to make soldiers feel constantly on edge, never knowing when or where they would be caught. The psychological impact of wire traps was significant, as soldiers learned to fear the ground they walked on. One soldier, Sergeant Michael O'Brien, recounted the moment he was lifted into the air by a net trap. "I didn't even know what hit me. One moment I was walking and the next I was hanging from a tree." Another terrifying tactic employed by the Viet Cong was the use of poisonous creatures like snakes and scorpions. These animals were often placed in booby traps or hidden in soldiers' sleeping areas, where their venomous bites could incapacitate or kill. One such incident involved U.S. Marine Corporal John Harker, who was bitten by a venomous snake while on patrol. The encounter left him with a lifelong fear of snakes, highlighting the psychological toll that these creatures had on soldiers. The Viet Cong also poisoned food and water supplies, adding another layer of fear to the already dangerous environment. Soldiers never knew if the food or water they consumed had been tainted, leading to further anxiety and mistrust. As the U.S. and South Vietnamese forces struggled to combat the constant threat of booby traps, they developed countermeasures to detect and disable the devices. U.S. Army engineer Captain Ernest Brace became a key figure in studying Viet Cong traps and developing techniques for disarming them. Soldiers were trained to recognize signs of tampered vegetation and disturbed soil, which often indicated the presence of traps. Special tools, such as the trap probe, were used to safely detect traps without setting them off, and canine units were trained to sniff out hidden devices. Despite these countermeasures, the Viet Cong continued to adapt their tactics, making it a constant challenge for the U.S. forces to stay one step ahead. The psychological toll of constantly fearing traps made the Vietnam War a unique and terrifying conflict, with soldiers forced to navigate not only the physical dangers of the jungle, but also the unseen threats that lay beneath the surface. The legacy of the Viet Cong's use of booby traps and guerrilla tactics continues to resonate in the history of the Vietnam War. These traps caused not only physical harm, but also psychological trauma, leaving lasting scars on the soldiers who encountered them. Even after the war ended, the landscapes of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos remain littered with unexploded ordnances and traps, posing a continued threat to the local populations. As we reflect on the ingenuity of the Viet Cong and the devastating impact of their tactics, we are reminded of the harsh realities of warfare and the lengths to which people will go to defend their land and their way of life. The Vietnam War, with its unique form of psychological warfare and deadly traps, remains a powerful reminder of the cost of conflict and the enduring impact it has on both the soldiers who fought in it and the land on which it was waged. As we conclude our exploration of the Viet Cong's ingenious and horrifying tactics, it's clear that their use of booby traps, guerrilla warfare, and psychological warfare left an indelible mark on the Vietnam War. These methods not only caused devastating physical injuries, but also eroded the morale of their enemies, making them a terrifying force on the battlefield. The legacy of the Viet Cong's ingenuity continues to be studied and serves as a reminder of the complex and unrelenting nature of asymmetric warfare. We hope this dive into the dark and resourceful tactics of the Viet Cong gives you a deeper understanding of the psychological and physical toll of war. Thanks for watching, and remember, the history of conflict is a powerful teacher for future generations.